Early last year, I decided to build up a system to do distortion measurements and close mic measurements of drivers, primarily for woofers, but then I want to do distortion for every speaker that I'm working with. I purchased the mode compensator early last year, which is a dual mic measurement system that can accurately measure distortion and near field close mic measurements. However, it doesn't provide absolute output. So after some time, I decided to purchase the Mini DSP UMic 2, which is a calibrated USB microphone, and I intended to use that as my reference microphone. However, I found that I did not have a close match between its results and the other two systems I had. I spent quite a bit of time assuming the UMic 2 response was the correct one and the others something was wrong, and I could not find any reasons for it. I went online to discussion boards, primarily Audio Science Review, and posted my results and got a lot of feedback and various kinds, various things, various possible problems. Eventually, nothing that I received was really answered the problem. So I eventually got in contact with Mini DSP, who had me send it in, and had it. It was verified against a standard reference microphone. I was told that there's nothing wrong with it. It was returned to me. I measured again, and I still had the same problem. So one of the recommendations was simply to calibrate that against my other systems that I believe were correct, and at least below 100 hertz, which is where the issue was. Starting with about 80 hertz, it started to diverge. I could easily just go in and do this adjustment to the correction calibration file for the UMic and be done with it, but that didn't satisfy me. That didn't sound like the way to go. So I've spent quite a bit of time since then trying to decide out what the problem is. I think I have found that. What I'm going to show you is what I found that is, at least in my experience, an issue, at least with using REW, the Room Equipment Wizard, to measure close mic near field measurements. And I say close mic because near field is a broad range. There's a transition between near field and far field, and it extends quite a ways out from the driver, which is dependent on driver diameter and the frequency involved, so it varies with both. The method to measure is generally to put it within a 1/4 inch. In this case, I put it 10 millimeters. It's not a fixed distance. There is one that you can find if you do some research on that, but in this case, for a 10-inch woofer that I'm measuring, the 10 millimeters works out pretty closely to the recommended, which is where I had all three microphones. At least initially, I did the single microphones. The mode compensator is a dual mic system, so it uses two mics at a further distance. However, the match was just nearly perfect with the Panasonic close mic measurement. So if you take a look at the graph on the screen here, I've got 4 measurements loaded, 3 of them shown. You'll notice the upper one, that's sort of reddish black, there's nearly perfect overlay between the Panasonic microphone through that separate preamplifier and the mode compensator dual system, at least from close to 100 hertz down, and it's within a dB up to the limits of 500 hertz of the graph that's shown. It's also fairly close for the UMic. It's above about 40 or 50. It's some divergence in there, but it's not serious. But if you take a look, of course, at the low end, by the time you get down to 20 hertz, it's 3 dB difference and increasing. The thing is that this is a closed box 10-inch woofer. It can only be 12 dB per octave asymptote. That's the only possibility with a closed box system. That's why I used this initially to make some comparison tests because I know what the response should look like. Whether or not it's absolute doesn't matter. I've had to adjust the levels on these to make them overlay because each microphone has a different sensitivity as recorded. But what I noticed was there's a consistency in that U mic that way, no matter what I did. At one point a little while ago, I noticed that I had made another measurement with the Panasonic mic on a different PC system. I've gone back and forth with a couple. Something was different. Now, of course, I played with REW settings in the meantime. Suddenly I noticed the Panasonic microphone sloped down a little too much too, and I thought, uh-oh, something's not right here, so I kept digging into it. I finally found what is at least the problem partially with the slope. If you're using REW for close mic measurements, whether with the driver or passive radio, or I assume it will also be the same for a port, I've not tested that, there's a control within REW that has an impact on that, and that's where the primary problem was. If I go up here and I open IR Windows, I had not done that for a long time. I had done some changes in the preferences, and then reloaded and worked with things, and it made changes. But then I finally found this IR Windows, which I had not been aware of for a long time, that is there for that. What I noticed is with the Panasonic, and it was recommended to use a different window for acoustic measurements. It's the same one that's built into the measurement system I started with almost 30 years ago, Liberty Audio Suite. Uses a Blackman-Harris window, half Blackman-Harris in that case. The default in REW is this 2-key 0.25, and I think given that REW is really originally intended for room EQ, you want to have a lot of the impulse measurement in your FFTs because you want room influence. If you're doing a close mic measurement, you want none of that. You want to limit as low as possible and have only the close mic, the driver measurement itself, the close mic. Take a look at the graph here. Watch what happens. I'll bring up for the U mic, which is this one right here. Well, that's the most recent one. There's a second one. The green one, blue. The blue one is one of the earlier U mic measurements that set all this off to begin with. And if you take a look at what happens when I simply switch to a Blackman-Harris window. It didn't do it right. Let's go back here. Blackman-Harris window. Quite a dramatic change. All of a sudden the slope starting from 80 down to 20 is almost the same. I could make some, I could adjust the levels and get them closer, maybe 50, 60 would be almost perfect. However, the other thing that I noticed was when I go and I take a look at the impulse, the default impulse for the for REW is 500 milliseconds. It turns out that's way too long if you're doing a close mic measurement. That's what you want for room EQs. But now if you come over here and take a look at this here, what I've got it set to here is 100 millihertz. And if that one has, let me make sure, if that one has the Blackman-Harris window, makes a big difference when you take a look here. If I switch over here to 500, there's a big change in that. I found after experimenting with all the three mics, approximately 100 is the better place to put it. Now if you take a look at the right window and slowly make changes to it, interesting how the slope changes, the level changes, the peak changes, everything. So I found with the multiple microphones that approximately 100 is the best to start with. You can play with it plus or minus. The trouble is that leaves the absolute best setting in question because it varies with everything. Now if I go back over here and I take a look at the others, this is what I have for the others. This one here was the most recent one, but I've got that one set to a Blackman-Harris window. Now if I bring this back down to 100, it tilts up the bottom end and tilts down the top a little bit. So somewhere around 100 is about right. If I go back here to all SPLs, this is where everything looks closer to what it should be. Now, there still seems to be a problem, I think, with the U mic. If you take a look from 80 hertz down, there's about a 1 dB difference, 1 to 1.5 dB, maybe, well, actually 2 dB difference down here. I'll probably go in and recalibrate the calibration file for the U mic to correct, to match these, and I believe that will make it accurate, because I believe the others are accurate. Just as an aside, I finally was able to get my old Liberty Audio Suite measurement system working again. Just for reference, it was written for DOS 3 in the late 80s. I purchased it in in the late 90s. I purchased it in 1998, used it under DOS 3, moved to Windows 3.1, moved finally to Windows 98. I'm using it within a window in Windows 98. My PC failed twice, different PCs. I've had multiple PCs, but I've had to either repair them, get them working again. But the Fiji sound card, Turtle Beach Fiji sound card, still works. I've got 2 of them and a third card. All of them still work. Once I got the PC working, and I reran measurements with Liberty Audio Suite that has a script for close mic measurement. It does a step sign. Gave me a perfect response, and this is over 25 years since, 28 years since I purchased the system. So that's really where I question why the U mic systems are so poor. At least to me, they seem so poor today. I guess they've got the built-in audio preamp, and then they have the ADC, and it's either the sensor itself or it's in the electronics. I don't know which is the problem. Maybe both, but the capsule can be replaced. But if I replace that, I don't know that the analog portion is good in the microphone. Anyway, this shows you that if you're going to be working with close mic measurements, you're going to have to try to come up with something close to, to get something as accurate as you can, at least. There's a range. There's no single spot that seems to work best, but they all are very close to 100. Now at this point, I don't care for everything below 20, but if you take a look, just again, if we take a look here and we go to the impulse, we take a look at below 20. Now this is leaving it with the other window, Blackman-Harris. If I move this out, look at how from 20 down, how that changes. If I go to 500, which is the default here, and then I can bring up the 2-key window, I don't think it changes too much. It just makes it a little lumpy. However, by the default, it makes a significant change. So if you're looking at anything below 20, certainly you could have 4 or 5 dB error. And these include the calibration files provided by the manufacturers. The one for the Panasonic is a calibrated file that I have, although I think it ends at 300, so below that it's not calibrated. But I think those things must have been so flat that they didn't ever, they were pretty good below that. But for some reason, the USB mics have more issues down low, and that may be more related to electronics than it is with the capsules. Panasonic's a 1/4 inch. The U mic is a 1/2 inch, I believe. So where the issue is, I don't know. But my recommendation is, if you use REW to do close mic measurements, you need to set the window at 100. You should use the Blackman-Harris window. That's probably going to be your best option. And I don't think I can say more than that.